All right, well, let's begin. If y'all would stand up and let us recite together. I feel like one thing that I've seen so this year we have our first class here of 11th graders and then one 10th grader, who's joining us for Greek. And I feel like the biggest change that I see week over week is with the recitation. Just how much more it flows the more you practice it and say it. That's not a threat. That's not so if you don't, it's just it helps to get used to saying the sounds. I'm just saying them again and again. So we'll try to keep a little bit higher of a pace, faster of a pace than we have in the previous weeks. So it'll be more like, kind of like that for each word, something like that. Especially for brief two-syllable nouns. So here we go. What's the declension of hehora? First declension feminine, pure alpha. Rho or vowel, hora, horas, hora, horon, hora. Horai, horon, horais, horas, horai. One thing I want to highlight that Angela's doing that I just noticed, and I'm a huge fan of it, is she is actually moving her hand with the accent. I think it matters. It helps. What's the declension of he phone? First declension, feminine, pure eta. Phone, phones, phone, phonane, phone. Phonai, phonon, phonice, phonus, phonai. What's the declension of he doxa? First declension, feminine, mixed. Doxa, doxes, doxe, doxon, doxa. Doxai, doxone, doxis, doxus, doxai. What's the declension of ha prophetes? First declension masculine. Prophetes, prophetu, prophete, prophetane, propheta. Propheti, prophetone, prophetis, prophetas, propheti. What's the declension of halagos? Second declension masculine. Logos, logu, logo, logon, loget. Logoi, logon, logois, logus, logoi. What's the declension of ta ergon? Second declension neuter. Ergon, ergu, ergo, ergon, ergon. Erga, ergon, ergois, erga, erga. What's the declension of ha archon, archontos? Third declension, masculine, feminine. Archon, archontos, archonti, archonta, archon. Archontes, archonton, archusi, archontus, archontes. What's the declension of tasoma, somatos? Third declension, neuter. Soma, somatos, somati, soma, soma. Somata, somatone, somasi, somata, somata. What's the declension of ha, he, ta? Ha, tu, to, ton, hoi, tone, tois, tus. He, taste, te, tain, high, tone, tis, tus. Ta, tu, to, ta, tone, tois, ta. What's the declension of ego, su? First and second person pronouns. Ego, emu, emoi, eme, hemes, hemon, hemin, hemus. Su, soy, se. Humes, humon, humin, humus. What are the principal parts of luo? Luo, luso, elusa, leluca, lelumai, eluthane. What's the conjugation of luo in the present active indicative? And pause for 1 second, sorry. A great way to check yourself, I was talking with my 9th grade Latin class today about the virtue of memory, or the skill of memory. The virtue behind memory are like temperance, for example, and prudence. But the skill of memory, and the way you could test your skill of memory, for example, on this is you could say, can I say this conjugation with my eyes closed? If you remember that from when you were a kid, like, I know it with my eyes closed. There you go. Or I say to the kids, if a fire alarm went off in the middle of the night, Could you recite this on the way out? Because I actually literally did that when I was in college. So there you go. All right. What's the conjugation of luo in the present active indicative? Luo, lues, lue, luamen, luete, luci. The infinitive, luane. What's the conjugation of luo in the present middle passive indicative? Luamai, lue, luetai, luamatha, luesthe, luontai. Infinitive, luesthai. What's the conjugation of a me in the present indicative? A me, a, esti, esmen, este, aisi. What's the conjugation of luo in the imperfect active indicative? Eluan, elues, elue, eluamen, eluete, eluan. What's the conjugation of luo in the imperfect middle passive indicative? Eluamen, elu, elueta, eluametha, eluesthe, eluanta. What's the conjugation of a me in the imperfect indicative? Amen, ace, ain, amen, ate, asen. What's the conjugation of luo in the future active indicative? Luso, luces, luce, lusamen, lucete, lususi. Infinitive, lusane. What's the conjugation of luo in the future middle indicative? Lusamai, luce, lucetai. Lusamatha, lucesthe, lusantai. Infinitive, lucesthai. What's the conjugation of a me in the future indicative? Esamai, esse, estai. Esamatha, esesthe, esantai. What's the conjugation of luo in the first aorist active indicative? Elusa, elusas, eluset. Elusamen, elusate, elusum. Infinitive, lusai. What's the conjugate? You're almost home. What's the conjugation of luo in the first aorist middle indicative? Elusamen, eluso, elusata, elusamatha, elusesthe, elusanta. Infinitive, lusesthai. What's the conjugation of lumbono in the second aorist active indicative? Elabon, elabes, elabe, elabemen, elabete, elabon. Infinitive, labane. What's the conjugation of lumbono in the second aorist middle indicative? Elabame, elabu, elabata, elabamatha, elabesthe, elabanta. Infinitive, labesthai. What's the conjugation of luo in the perfect active indicative? Leluca, lelucas, leluke, lelucamen, lelucate, lelucasi. Infinitive, lelucanai. What's the conjugation of luo in the perfect middle passive indicative? Lelumai, lelusai, lelutai, lelumitha, lelusthe, leluntai. Infinitive, lelusthai. What is the conjugation of luo in the pluperfect active indicative? Elelucain, elelukes, eleluke, elelukemen, elelukete, elelukesun. What's the conjugation of luo in the aorist passive indicative? Eluthane, eluthes, eluthe, eluthamen, eluthete, eluthesun. Infinitive, luthani. What's the conjugation of luo in the future passive indicative? Luthesamai, luthese, luthesatai, luthesamatha, luthesesthe, luthesantai. And then pray with me if you would. Jesu huie David, eleison me hamartelan. All right, take a seat. Let's, absolutely. Yes. A. Mm-hmm. AC. AC. Then it's wrong. Thank you. All right. See, my mouth is sloppy too. Thank you. It does encourage me a lot. Okay, that's a great call. If you hear those kind of things, please feel free to correct me. I am so far from perfect when it comes to these things. I really feel it, for example, where the alphas and the epsilons, for example, in the first aorist active, they're going elusa, eluses, elusa, and I can feel that I'm being hyper self-conscious about like the versus the kind of thing. So on the one hand, don't let it like demoralize you or discourage you, but I also find it really helpful to just keep saying it and just getting your mouth used to kind of making those shapes and sounds. All right, today we are going to talk about probably two main concepts. The first will just be review of the idea of case, and we'll add onto that a new declension. So this chapter is a good like deep breather chapter, as I said last time, and then we're going to work probably with most of our time of the joy of accents. So just to show you a little bit of what I mean, I'm going to try to teach you a very mechanical, not a helpful thing, a mechanical like, okay, if it's a verb, I'll do this and this and this. If it's a noun, I'll do this and this and this. And you can kind of like chug it out, which can be helpful. If you don't like it mechanical, then you can just be artistic in your brain, I suppose, about it while you're mechanical. Okay, so first, questions on the homework. Any particular sentences come up that gave you a challenge, anything that was tricky? And again, the big idea was this idea of case and function. Case and function, or job, or if you want to be grammatically more correct, you could say relationship to the verb. That's kind of what's going on there. Yeah, Rose. Sure. On what? Any number in particular? Okay. Yeah. It's similar to in English if I said the ice was cool versus you're cool. Like your mind just jumps between, I'm not saying you're cool, but, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, right, but like you don't have to say anything more than like, oh, okay, you contextualize it, right? And that's really what's going on. Yeah, and it kind of makes sense either way of like, yeah, and that's totally fine. Serve him in truth and in your whole heart. And I think you can kind of see a similar, the idea is like kind of a location. It's where it is, it's kind of embedded, so to speak. No, that's again the art of translation, where you're trying to take an idea from one language and you're trying to take that idea to another language. And it's why something's always lost in translation. Because, for example, and again, this is minor here, it's not a big deal, but in English, I wouldn't be able to necessarily see that was N and N. I might in English see, for example, with and in, or in and with, or something like that. Right, so we had a really funny example today in history. We were talking about Jacob. And in English, you kind of miss that he feeds Esau stew. He feeds him red stew. So he feeds Esau stew. Right, the red one, red stew. And so their kid's like, oh, it's like he cooked it for him. Like he knew his brother was like hot-headed, and he's like, I think so. He cooks him Esau stew for me. Anyway, but like you kind of miss that in translation, and sometimes it can stay. And anyway, it's tough. So it's one of the benefits of being able to go back to the original and kind of see like, oh, actually, this word is translated here faithfulness, and here it's translated justness or righteousness, or so it can be helpful. Yeah, it's okay. We're gonna, in like 2 chapters, we'll get more into just kind of the syntax, which is the word order question. So let's see if I can find you a really good one. Let's look at number 6 in the Septuagint. So it starts off, examo logeidsontai hoi huranoi, pardon me. The heavens will preach forth. The heavens will praise. There we go. Will praise. What will they praise? Tain aletheon su. Su there you can see is actually what's called an enclitic. It lost its accent. It actually gave it to aletheon. But so literally it says the truth of you. But we wouldn't translate it that way. Do you see what I'm talking about? Yeah, right. So, yeah, your truth. So if you said the truth of you, you're not wrong. You're just a little Yoda-tastic, as I tell the kids, right? The truth of you. You know, and you're kind of like, it's not funny. You know, and so that's where, again, the style of one language is going to differ from the style of another language. Again, that's very common in Greek to double up the article, which again, that's 2 chapters away, so you don't have to worry about that. Right. So that's just like my Jedi powers of like, is this a true, like I'm going to include a the, or is this more like, it's probably just indefinite? Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Did I have a typo there? I think that was one of the typos Rose found. Yes, I did correct the sheet. I didn't send a new email. I just updated the actual sheet itself at the source. So yes, I do have typos, which by the way, just made me really sympathetic to my students. It's so humbling to be like, oh right, I make mistakes too. And probably they're all sloppy. Like I think I know it. And it's just 100% vice. Really. It's just 100% sloppiness. Good reminder for me. It may be a good reminder for you too. Yeah, no, it's totally something I need to do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, literally the days of the life of him. Yeah. And that one maybe sounds a little better, the days of the life of him, but that's still right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So if you think about like, so even in English grammar, this is going to get into a little bit of the weeds of English, but I think it's helpful to know what words mean, right? Learning to care for words. This guy named Wendell Berry has this great little piece called "Standing by Words," and he has this little note in there of, I'd like to think that I know my words enough that I could actually stand by them, like that I didn't just randomly say stuff. So all I have to say is, these are called, indefinite articles versus definite articles. Okay. Indefinite just means it's related to, for example, this would be in Latin finis, or you could think maybe of going to a dictionary to find a definition. It's about boundary marking. That's kind of the idea. So in a definite article marks that it is a particular one. This one, or this versus just a generic cup or whatever, right? This the book versus just a book, something like that. So when we say, for example, in that one, was it your truth, your life, his life? Sorry, it's clear that we're talking about a particular life. And in English, when we say his life versus just like life or a life, in English, his or your in your sentence brings enough definiteness that in English we can kind of go like, oh, I don't need the life of him. Greek has it still. Greek's going to keep it. But in English, we're going to go, well, your or his brings us that definiteness. Does that kind of make sense? Like kind of I said, my bottle brings me enough versus if I just said bottle or a bottle. Okay, so it's I think that's the way we can think of it in English. We got our definiteness from somewhere else. We don't just have to take it from this article. But in Greek, we're going to have that. For example, anarche ein halaga. So in the beginning was the word kai halagas ein prostantheon, and the word was in proximity to the God is actually what it says. But we wouldn't say to the God, right? We would just say to God. So even in Latin, or pardon me, what language are we teaching here? In Greek, you're going to see ha theos, or there you had ton theon. And in English, we're not going to say the God. Yeah. Nothing. Okay. Oh, great. Yes. Okay, good. Okay. Yes, good. Okay, so let's go to this and let's see if we can, from memory, how many cases and or functions or jobs we can get total. So there are 10. There are 5 and 5. Let's see how many we can get. Anybody know the first case that's listed? Nominative. Good. And that word in Latin actually means name. Like to nominate someone is to put forth a name. And did I say nomin? To nominate. Sorry. Or no, you said nomen. I didn't say nomen. Okay. So the nominative case is used, we could say, to name what? It tells us the subject. Or if we had what's called a predicate nominative, like I am Batman. Those would both actually be in the predicate, or pardon me, in the nominative case. Okay? And that linking verb am works like a equal sign. So nominative equals nominative. So it's used for the subject, or we'll see eventually a predicate nominative. All right, second case down. Genitive, and this comes from the Latin word for genus. I actually just saw it today in a poem. I was very excited. Oops, sorry, I wrote genus instead of genitive. Okay. And what is a genus? How many people in this room practice science and medicine professionally? 2/3 of you nerdy people. Good night. Okay, so what's a genus? A kind, a type of blank, right? It's an of thing. So a species of turtles or a species of trout or something like that. So the genitive, I always like to think it's of blank, but very, very often it's going to be used as a possessive. His life, his, your, what was it, your truth? Is that what it was? Yeah, okay. So possessive's probably the most common genitive, but then there are also things like the table of wood, called the genitive of material, or one of the king's men, that's called a partitive genitive, or a genitive of the whole, or the faith of Christ, Christ's faith, which is either a subjective or an objective genitive, but that's not what we need to talk about today. Okay, so anyway, there are many, many of them. They'll all fit pretty well within the English prepositional phrase of blank. But possessive will be the most common, for us especially. Okay, third one down. Dative, yes. And what's that used for? We're going to see that with indirect objects, and then eventually we'll add some things as we go. But let me pause here for just a second and ask, what's an indirect object? What is that? To or for whom what? What do you say to the kids, grammar teacher? Yes? Okay. Okay. Okay, so it's to or for what? So for example, if I use a simple definition of, say, subject, I can say the subject's the one that does the verb. That's not true, actually, but that'll work for us tonight. So the subject does the verb. The genitive would tell us maybe who possesses the noun, called the head noun. So, Susie's dress, Johnny's house, the table of wood. Okay, so it works off another noun. The indirect object, what does that work with? What to or for, Johnny? Yeah, so let's think about this. What does the verb act on immediately? The direct object. Good, and that's actually our next one. So don't be dismayed that they're, again, kind of in this order. And usually, right, when we teach this in, say, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we actually start with the subject and then the direct object. Because that's like your most basic simple sentence. I see Kelby. Subject, transitive verb, direct object. Okay, and the direct object, what's that case called? Accusative, like you're going to accuse somebody directly. Okay, so the accusative marker, I throw the marker directly, again, if you like physics, right, it's the energy is transferred directly to the marker. And then, again, if you like physics, the energy gets transferred from this to that, right, or like pool, something like that. Rick, you had a question? Ooh, the iota subscript. It's an improper diphthong. So like that. That's right. That's right. So that's an itty bitty iota that gets stuck under there. So that's called an improper diphthong. It doesn't actually change the pronunciation. It just lets you know it's dative. That's it. That's or subjunctive, but not this year. Not this year. That's in the future. Okay. You know what? I think actually we see one in the future indicative of a me, if I recall. And now that I said that, yeah, there it is. Yeah, essay, pardon me. So anyway, there's one there, but yes, it's very rare outside of the dative, and especially for us. Okay. All right, one more, and it shows up in our little prayer. Jesus, son of David, qui est David. We're calling on Jesus. The vocative, yeah. So in English, you need to remember in English, we don't actually have these things, okay, outside of like pronouns, like he, his, and him. He, his, and him. So especially I'll say to grammar teachers, we don't have the vocative in English. What do you call it when you teach English grammar? Your kid. Ellie? It could be a command, or you could just be taught, like, Alicia, could you tell me? Yes, good. So that's actually what we would call it in English. Because in English, and this is why this is so tricky, is we don't have case in English besides our pronoun. So in English, in one sense, I don't try to like nitpick at things, but we don't have vocatives in English. We don't do this thing. Does that make sense? Right? So we don't have, actually, and if you notice, Hebrew doesn't either. Now, how would you know that? Well, look at your Septuagint translations. Look at Samuel, Israel. In one of them, you actually see the name in multiple uses, but it hasn't changed. Where was that? Jesus, you'll see, for example. Some of them, you'll see them change, but all those Septuagint examples, if maybe it's in the next chapter, sorry, you'll see like Israel, and you'll see it as a subject, you'll see it as a direct object, and it never changes. So Hebrew also kind of does what English does, which is it doesn't change forms. You just have to use word order, syntax, to tell you, well, what's its job? Whereas like Greek and Latin and German will do this thing. We'll do this case thing. Okay? All right, so that's the big idea. And the good news is this next chapter really doesn't add a new idea, okay, to this. Okay, it's going to add another pattern, and those are called declensions. Okay? So before we get into that, I want to get into our English to Greek because that's a really good place to practice accenting. Okay? Yes. And you should. You should have trouble with accenting. I think as far as like if you're not a soul that really, really loves nitty-gritty details, which is probably not most of us, and accenting seems like a big pain in the butt, and it kind of is a big pain in the butt. So let's talk about accenting. And here's how I think it's helpful to teach it. So we're going to talk about verb accenting. We're going to talk about noun accenting tonight. And then we're just going to talk about kind of first we'll just do general rules for accenting. Let's see what you remember. Okay? Now, in a normal word, unless you have like an enclitic or something, but ignore that for a second. In a normal word, we're concerned about the last three syllables. You remember talking about that a little bit? Those last three syllables, those are the three syllables that could take an accent. Does anybody remember what we call those three syllables? Any of them? Okay, which one is which? Ultima, it's the last one. It's and again, that sounds maybe bizarre, but ultima, it's the final, it's the ultimate challenge or whatever. The climbing Everest, it was the ultimate. You know, once you've done that, you're all done or something. Okay, so that's called the ultima. It literally just means last in Latin. It's like radius means spoke. Circumference means carrying around. Diameter means measuring through. Science and math would be so much easier if we, like latissimus dorsi, the sidemost of the back. That's what that muscle's called. It's a muscle, right? Latissimus dorsi? Is that right? Okay. I don't know any of these. I only know Latin. I'm like, the sidemost of the back, it must be here-ish, right? Okay. Anyway, I know nothing. All right, before the ultima, or really what's funny is it's almost the ultima, almost the last. It's a penult, just like Florida is almost an island. It's a peninsula, an almost island is actually literally what that translates as. Okay, so this is the penult, the almost last. And then we have the before the almost last, the antepenult. Okay, like the antebellum South. Okay, versus the postbellum South or something like that. Okay, so those are the only three syllables where we could have an accent. Does anybody remember anything else about accenting in general? What? Oh, good. Okay, so that's going to come over here under verb specifically. It is recessive. Okay, so I'll just, verbal accent is recessive. And what that means is, right, it wants to go back as far from the ultima as it can. That's all that means. It's receding. And again, it's kind of weird because we kind of have to get our eyes and our minds used to actually reading backwards if we're trying to accent live, if that makes sense. Okay? Anything else at all you remember about accents? Okay, so the acute, it's just an acute little guy. It can go on any of those antepenult, penult, or ultima. Good. So here's where I color code. I learned this from a third grade teacher about 12 years ago. All right. Other things you know about accenting? Anything at all? The tilde. The circumflex, good, could go either on the penult or the ultima, but yes, it does look like a tilde. It's in Spanish, it's called the tilde. Yeah, in Latin or in Greek. What language are we talking about? We can't do this. We can't mix up too many languages here in our stew. Okay, so that's the circumflex. Oh, let's write our names. Acute, we've got that in orange. Circumflex, we've got that in red right now. Anybody remember the last one? Good. The grave, it literally means the heavy. It goes on the ultima only. Good. That's right. I know, it's different language. Different language. That's right. That's right. Legs up, legs down. Okay. Does anybody remember anything else about accents at all? Anything at all? Nouns are persistent. And I like, Rose, that you said persistent. I was taught noun accent is retentive, but that always messed me up because I was like, wait, recessive and retentive? And I didn't know what either of those words meant in English, basically. So, yes, I like to say noun accent is persistent. It wants to stay where it is. That's what that means. Persistent. If it can stay, it wants to stay. And we're going to talk about why it would have to move. Okay? But if you let it, so for example, in our, if you go to your recitation, and if you're not there, having the first page of the recitation is good for tonight especially. Okay? So look at, for example, phone, the second one. Look in the dictionary form, where is your accent and what is it? And by the way, these are the questions I'm going to keep asking. Where is it and what is it? Where is it and what is it? Where is it and what is it? Why is it where it is? Why is it what it is? Okay? So first, in that question, what is the declension of hey phone? Where is the accent and what is the accent? It's on the ultima and it's an acute. You agree with that? Okay, let's look. Does it stay there? Does it persist on that ultima? Phone, phonace, phone, phonane, phone. Phonai, hold on. Phonai, phonon, phonice, phonus, phonai. Did it stay? Yes. So it persisted. We can say it this way. It was allowed. It was able to stay. It wants to stay. Let me stay. No, we'll talk about why. We'll talk about why. Okay? But first, just that. Okay. I want to give a couple more just general rules. So circumflex, one thing about the circumflex accent is it can only go on long syllables. It can only stand over long syllables. So like long vowels. Anybody remember some long vowels? Good. Omega's long. The short would be omicron. So you've got A versus O. Eta is long. What's the short? Epsilon. Good. And then we have alpha, which could be short or long. iota, which could be short or long, and upsilon, which could, I was like, there's one more vowel in there somewhere, and upsilon, which could be short or long. Okay? So that's one thing to be aware of, is it can only stand on long. What else did we say is long? So not just like omega and eta, pardon me. Diphthongs are always long, except, here's an exception. So I'm just doing longs here. So we said omega's long, eta's long, and we said diphthongs are long, except, and we're going to see this play out today, final, I, and oi. And that's just an exception. Kind of annoying. Final, that is if they're the last letters in the word. So for example, horai, or horai, pardon me, that is actually short. Okay. All right, and there's one more thing I want to tell you about the circumflex. And then we're going to talk about, see if anybody remembers anything about the grade. The circumflex, the other thing to be aware of for the circumflex is if the pattern goes short, long, it will be a circumflex. Sluh. This is the way I remembered it when I was in college. Sluh, circumflex. I had all kinds of stupid mnemonic devices like that. It goes, sluh is a circumflex. Okay. So, for example, look at your declension of hora. Hey, hora. Hey, hora. Hora, horas, hora, horan, hora. Did the accent stay in the same place? Did it persist? Did the accent change? Was it the whole way or did it change? In the singular. It's acute the whole way. Okay? Let's look at that plural column. Horai. Did it stay? Did it change the accent though? Can you see it? You can't quite see it? It's a circumflex. And here is this rule playing out. Final I is short, horai. And if it goes sla, it's a circumflex. So if it goes short, long, so what we've got here is, that's long, right? The omega is always long. And final I is short. So it goes short, long, circumflex. It doesn't. What's that other one? Horai. Yeah, it's a rough breather. Ho, 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 ho. Started as a laugh and became Santa Claus. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay. Otherwise, if you notice, there's some other changes going on there, and that's what we'll talk about in just a second. Okay? All right. The last thing I'll just remark on is the grave. Does anybody remember, or the grav? Anybody remember what the deal is with this thing? If not, that's okay. All right. So this is just an acute, and it changes to a grav if followed by an accented word. And we're loading up rules. I am very aware that we are loading up on rules. Whew, it's like the worst part of building Legos. Lay out all your pieces. If it's followed by an accented word, that's right. So it's no, just anywhere, just anywhere. So it's not, or it could be a punctuation mark. No, you get an acute. But, okay, so let's look at some sentences of it. Okay. That's right. So you said if there's a punctuation mark after. Yes. No, it stays in a key. It stays in a key. So let's look at that. Actually, page 16 on the very top. Practice and review number 3. Practice and review number 3. Cardia, adelphes, utele, pistuein, hati, echete, zoein. It does not. Can anybody find the word without an accent? oo does not. Oo, the adverb, negative adverb oo does not have an accent. It is a smooth breather, yeah. I know, your eyes. Training your eyes is hard. Oh, it's hard. Right. Yes. Because certain forms actually change based on the accent.
Right, but if we're,
No, even when reading the Greek, there are words. Trying to think of them. There's one really common one that now it's not the word one, mia, but no, that's hen versus n. Okay, that's a rough versus smooth breather. Hen is a word for one, n is the preposition in or with. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen to all your cultural imperialism. Why should I have to learn this other? Okay. All right. So just notice there, did we have any grobs at all? Were there any grobs in that sentence? There were not. Okay. Let's look at, now I'm going to try to stack the deck the other way, right? Actually, you have to go all the way down to sentence 6. So let's look at sentence 6. Ekusin adelphos kai adelphe gain kai thelusin ekein basileas. Grave party, isn't it? You see them all? Adelphos, that was an acute. It switches to a grave because it's followed by an accented word. Kai, which was an acute, which is now switched to a grave because it's followed by adelphe, which was an acute and now it's changed to a grave because it's followed by gain, which is followed by kai. Gain, by the way, is a kind of an irregular noun. Okay, so that's enough of those rules. Let's talk about verbs. Verbs are easier. It doesn't mean easy. Notice I didn't say easy. I said easier. Okay. So verbal accent is recessive.
Sorry. So
totally fine. So when we do the sentences, I'm going to show you how, and again, it won't feel like this today, so I'll have to pull a trust me on this. Okay. After we do even just these 4 sentences, every word you're going to walk through this logic, and it will become embedded on your soul. Okay? Which is kind of terrifying, I know. But for example, my high schoolers, they have a test. Their test is 1 English to Greek sentence, and then they have to write an essay on why they translated it the way they did, and then they have to do what we're going to do for accents. They actually have to spell out the logic. It's going to feel more like a geometry proof than it is like a, verb class or something, grammar class. Okay, it's very important. Logic is a verbal art, by the way. It's a verbal art. It's not a mathematical art. And there's something going on there. Okay, so verbal accent is recessive. There's one more little thing we need to know that applies to both. And here's the rule, the last rule, is if the ultima is long, it has a short rope. This is for both. And we're going to see this come into play, okay? If the ultima is long, it has a short rope. And this means this, that no matter what, the accent cannot go back to the antepenult, no matter how much it wants to. We're going to see that. But if the ultima is short, I'll use it as deep color. If the ultima is short, it has a long rope, which means it could go all the way back to the antepenult. So again, we're going to reason from the end. If the ultima is long, the accent could only be on the ultima or the penult. If the ultima is short, then it could go all the way back to the antepenult. Okay? All right, so here we go. We have all the rules we need to play. So let's play. Do they wish, English to Greek number 1, do they wish in Greek? Good. Delusi. Okay, so here we go. Oops, I'm going to try not to say these words. Oops. Drop into English. Okay. Where does the accent go? Why does the accent go where it goes? Which accent, pardon me. Okay, so here we go. First, where. Is this a verb or a noun? It's a verb. Verbal accents are? Good. Next question. Is the ultima long or short? That's going to tell me whether I'm dealing with that short little rope, long ultima, short rope, or short ultima, long rope, right? Because that verbal accent wants to go back as far as it can, okay? So is this iota short or long iota? Excellent. It could be either. So here we have to have our paradigm. Ready? Here we go. Can everybody say the present active indicative of luo? Ready? Luo, lues, lue, luamen, luete, luusi. Did you hear the accent? Where was it? The antepenult, which means this iota is short. This is a short iota. Always. Let's do it again. Good. So for things like this, we know the pattern. Okay? We know the pattern. So I just have to know 7 times 7 is, how did you know that? You drilled it. So that's actually the art of the recitation. Just knowing luo, lues, lue, luamen, luete, luusi, infinitive, luane. And I've got to have that pattern because I don't actually know if that iota is short or long. Now everything else, watch, I already know. For example, just for fun, we'll do it with this verb. Fellow. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say it. Okay, here we go. Is the ultima, it's a verb. Verbal accent is recessive. Go to the ultima, is that long or short? Long, so it's got a short rope. It goes long, short, accent, acute. Okay? That's right, that's right. So, because the only way you get a circumflex, Rick, is if it goes short, long. And this one goes long, short. See it? Okay, let's do it again. Ready? Second person singular. Somebody give me the form. Fellow, it's good. I'm just trying not to repeat it. Verb or noun? Verbal accent is? Recessive. Go to the ultima. Is it short or long? Long because it's a diphthong. Long ultima, short rope. Does it go short, long, or something else? Therefore, it's in acute. Go back to again. I said only if it goes short, long. Only if it goes short, long. Okay? So this goes long, short. Let's do it third person singular. He wishes. He desires. He wants. Thele. Good. Here we go. Is that a verb or a noun? Verb. Verbal accents are? Recessive. Go to the ultima. Is it long or short? Long ultima. Short rope. So it's going to go here. Does it go short, long, or something else? It goes long, short, therefore acute. Now watch. I could also just know my paradigm. It goes luo, lues, lue, luamen, luete, luusi. So that's where your paradigm saves you, if that makes sense. It saves you the work, but you want to kind of be able to build it both ways. Okay? Let's continue. We wish, desire. Yep, sorry. I'm going to try not to repeat it. Okay, here we go. Verb or noun? Verb. Verbal accent is? Go to my ultima. Is it short or long? Short. Short ultima. Long rope. And if it goes all the way back to the antepenult, what's the accent got to be? Second person plural. Y'all wish. What is it in Greek? Here we go. Is that a verb or a noun? Verb. Go to my ultima. Is it short or long? Short. Short ultima. Long rope. And if it goes all the way back to the antepenult, that's it. That's the mantra, right? That's if you can do that, you know your stuff. You know it. And you don't know it, right? That's right. Then you don't know it, okay? But the great thing about every English to Greek sentence is every verb you're going to say that chain. So here we go. Ultima, long, short. And then we're going to ask, potentially, we might ask, maybe, right? Then we're going to get our where of it from that. And then we're going to get our what from that, short, long. If not, But if it were short, long, it'd be circumflex. Anything else will be an acute. Anything else. Okay? All right, so. Yes? Yes? That's exactly right. But notice, are these verbal accents ever going to go on that ultima? Seems not. Why not? That's exactly it. Look at that logic. Bam! Right? It wants to go away, and at the very least, it's got a short rope. And if it's short on that ultima, it gets to get a long rope, and it gets to get so far away, you're never going to see a grave on a verb. Okay, so we go back to our paradigm. Okay, thelusi, is that a verb or a noun? It's a verb. Ultima is short or long. And here we had to tap our paradigm. It's short because it goes luusi, luusi. So I know it's short. Short ultima, long rope, acute on the. Good deal? Yes. That is true. Unless it's followed by an enclitic. So in that little prayer we say at the end, eleison me. Me is an enclitic form. It means it doesn't take an accent. So it kind of like throws its accent back a word. So actually, eleison, if you look at it, it takes two accents. And that's only happening because it's followed by an enclitic. Yeah, it's right there. Okay, so let's keep going. Do they wish to hear? To hear? To hear. To hear. Akuane, good. Pardon me. Is akuane, sorry, I don't want to say it. Is that a verb or a noun? Verbal accent is recessive. Is the ultima short or long? Long, long ultima, short rope. It goes long, long. Is that an acute or a circumflex? Long, long is an acute. That's right. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's still got that diphthong in it, which is saying you're long. Okay? All right. Do you want to hear a sound? Noun mantra coming up. A sound. First, let's think grammatically. What's the job? What's the function of sound in that sentence? Is it a subject? Is it a? It's a direct object. It's what they're hearing or what they want to hear. Okay. So it's a direct object. What case will it go into? Accusative. Good. So then we have to know our vocab and our declension, right? We have to know where does it fit. Is it a pure alpha? Goes us, right? Is it a pure eta? Ace, a? Is it a mixed ace, a, etc. Okay. So sound. What's our noun for sound? Phone. Good. And this is really important in nouns because nouns. Now we're going to jump into because noun accent is persistent. It wants to stay where it was, unless it's not allowed to. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about is when does it have to move, and then why might it change? Okay, so this is where I can get a little, I'll just tell you, nouns, man, they can be challenging. Okay, so nouns have a bunch of rules, individual rules. I always feel like Pigpen if there's like a mosquito or a bug around me. Charlie Brown reference. Okay, here's some noun rules. Noun rule number one, and we're just doing this in order, it doesn't really matter. First declension noun, all first declension. The genitive plural is going to take a circumflex. All first declension nouns. The genitive plural, I'm going to shorthand that by genitive capital P. Did you see it? I like that Rose has a lot of Berean in her, right? She's not going to take my word for it. She's going to go and search earnestly the scriptures herself. What a blessing to be close to a place called Berea. Be reminded of that. All right, so anyway, you see it if you look. Phoron, phonon, doxon, propheton. They're all there. So that's just a rule. It's kind of memory. Okay, a second rule. This is relevant to our word phone. If in the first or second declension, which we're going to look at today, first and second declension, If the ultima is accented, like, for example, our word phone, if the ultima is accented, then the genitive and dative, singular and plural, will take a circumflex. And I know that feels like a random, bizarro rule, but that's the rule. If the ultima is accented, which it is in our word phone, right? So that's the dictionary form. Phone, pardon me. It's true in the first and second. Yeah, first and second. So it's the majority of words. So if it's accented on the ultima, then if I need a genitive or dative, singular or plural, it'll take a circumflex. Okay? All right, so let's go back to our sentence here. We have phone. We wanted to take this and put it in the accusative, did we say? Because it's a direct object? Okay, so is phone a pure alpha, a pure eta, or a mixed? It's a pure eta. So what's the accusative? Do we want a singular or a plural here? We want a singular, okay. So what would that be? What's our ending? Phone, good. Now let's just see if any of our rules are tripped so far. Is that a genitive plural? Is that a genitive or dative, singular or plural, for an ultima accented noun? No. So we haven't tripped any of those special rules, have we? Nope. Let's go on. We're done then. Remember, because it's a noun accent and it wants to stay. It wants to just be where it is. Of a seed. Of a seed. A genitive, of a, good. And what's the noun that we're going to need to put into the genitive? Good. And where was the accent on that, Angela? Good. Okay. So now that's the dictionary form, right? I'm going to remember my little question mark so I don't forget it. So the dictionary form is thalassa. Is that the case in the number we need it in? No, we need it in the genitive. And is this a pure alpha, pure eta, or mixed? Mixed, because it's not a rho or vowel before that alpha. Good. So what's going to be my genitive singular? Thalasses. Ooh, it gets interesting. Does anybody see what just happened? What did we put in the ultima spot? We put a long. Now, wait a second. What was, by the way, here's your logic check, just for fun. If you don't like logic, woo, watch this. Was this alpha right here short or long in the dictionary form? How do you know it has to be short? Because it's got a long rope. But now we've got this eta that's come in and taken over. And so now we've got a long ultima, which means we have a short rope, which means that accent can't stay there anymore, even though it really, really wants to. Noun accent is persistent. But now I've shortened its rope, right? So now I've got an eta that drags it back to the la. Now my question is this la an acute or a circumflex? Good, because it goes long, short. Good. And there it is. But we're not done yet. Can anyone see it? Something has to change. What has to change with phonane? Yes, because now it's being followed by an accented word. Boom. So if you could be like the students of like, what if I just want to put phonane at the end of the sentence so I don't have to change the acute to the grave? Like, the great thing is like you already told me you know what you're doing then. You're just avoiding having to put it back the other way. That's how kids think. Adults never think like that. We never try to do things like that. That's right. That's right. That's right. Whew. Isn't that awesome? Man. All right, let's do number 2. One down. All right, number 2. A land does not know an hour of truth, and a kingdom does not have light. Now, you don't have to go in order of the sentence. You really don't. It's a good place to start. It's just kind of, a land does not know an hour of truth. Okay. Land? Gay. And what case is it going to go in? What job is it doing? And so what case? It's a subject, so it's a nominative. Good. So it's just our dictionary form. Is that right? Gay, like that? Okay. All right. Does not know. Does not. Ooh, good. Yeah, ooh. We need that negative adverb. Ooh. And then what's our verbal form? And what was that ending we decided to put on it? Because gay is a third person singular, right? The land would be like an id or something. A she, actually, in Greek, but sure enough. Okay. All right. Here we go. Accenting genoske, or accenting the verb. Is it a verb or a noun? I'm giving away all the answers. I'm doing a terrible job. Okay, it's a verb. Verbal accent is? Recessive. Go to my ultima. Is it long or short? Long, so it's got a? Good. Long, long. Yep. Does not know. What does it not know? An hour. Okay, what was our, again, dictionary word for hour? Hora. Good, hora. And what's the job it's doing in the sentence? It's a direct object, so what case does it go into? Accusative, good. And hora, in the accusative, is that a pure alpha, a pure eta, or a mixed? Pure alpha because rho or vowel before the alpha. Isn't it crazy? This is geometry, man. It's just, if you think you don't like geometry, you're just wrong. It's just so fun to build things like this. Okay, so it's a pure alpha because it's got a rho before the alpha. Now, is this a verb or a noun? Oh, sorry, we got to put it in the case first. All right, we said accusative, but then we didn't do it. Okay. Now, is this a verb or a noun? Noun, and noun accent is? Persistent. Okay. Where was the accent on our dictionary form? On the omega, so ho, right? Okay. Let's see, is the ultima accented on the dictionary form? No, so it's not going to be. How about this one? Are we going for a genitive plural? No, we're not going for genitive plural. Okay. Do we need to move it? No. Do we need to change it? No. Stay. Okay. All right. Let's see. Does not know of truth. Of truth. Okay, so the dictionary form is aletheia. Is that right? Is that where the accent falls? Again, we have to know, right, because it's persistent. Aletheia. Is that right? Okay. So, of truth, function, genitive, good. Of blank, okay. So here's my, that's my dictionary form. In the genitive, is this a pure alpha, pure eta, or mixed? Pure alpha because rho or vowel, good. So it's pure alpha, put it into the genitive. Okay. Is that right? Oh, okay. All right. Now, this is maybe a minor rule, but I want you to see it. So actually, you don't have to go back. I'll just give you the rule. Sorry. So this is another sub-rule that's particular to the first declension. Sorry, I've kind of run out of room. I know, you're like, seriously, more rules? Okay. But you've actually seen, we've actually been able to do a lot of words without this rule so far. Okay. So, but now we need it. Yeah, okay. So here's the rule. If the alpha is long, then it's going to stay long. The final alpha, that is. We're talking about the alpha. Okay. So, for example, in our word thalassa, was that a long or a short alpha? The short alpha, so this rule doesn't apply. This is the one that would apply, even though I know it's mixed. If it's a short alpha, that is that final alpha, if it's short, and we'll see that because the accent will be allowed and will often sneak its way back. So I'm going to take that sigma off. That's got to be a short alpha. How do I know that? How do I know this alpha at the end of aletheia is short? Good. So this has a long rope, right? A. So that has to be short. So that's, my brain goes, oh, this is short. And if it's short, it's only short also in the accusative singular. Everywhere else, that alpha morphs into long. So, for example, the genitive singular, it's already going to be long in the dative singular. The Good. So it changes. That's right. So, again, we could not know that unless we added this rule. Okay? So when we shift that to the genitive singular, we've changed that short alpha, which I can see because of where that accent was, and it's only going to stay short if it's an accusative singular. Is this an accusative singular? So that just lengthened. Okay? It just lengthened. It's genitive singular, so it drags it. Now it became long. Long ultima, short rope. And even though my noun accent wants to stay on ale, it can't do it. So it becomes aletheos. That's the hardest word type to do. That is the hardest word type to do. It's not going to be able to stay. It gets dragged in. And even more nuanced than that, we have an alpha that sometimes is long and sometimes is short. We can only know that by deduction of that accent was on the antepenult, which means that was short because it had a long rope. When it changes to anything except for the accusative singular, it gets long. It has to drag the accent. That's the hardest word you can do as far as the kind of rules and sub-rules and logic. Okay? So if you tracked with that even somewhat, you're good. I promise. Okay, let's finish this sentence and then we'll get into the last thing for this evening. An hour of truth and a kingdom does not have life. That's such a random sentence. Okay. A kingdom does not have life. Oh, sorry. And, Kai, a kingdom does not have life. Kingdom? Good. Basi, and where was that accent? Good. Basileia. Right? Like that? And is that going to stay in the nominative? Is it a subject? Or is it going to be in some kind of... Good, because it's the subject of? Good. Does not have in this case. Good. So it'll just stay like that, right? Basileia. Because I'm not going to inflect it. I'm not going to put it into an oblique case. Okay? Does not have? Doesn't... Ooh, or... Well, let's see. And then have. Good, it comes from echo. Okay, so which form do I want? Good. Okay, here we go. Is oo okay? No, ek. It's like a k. I can't have oo because it's followed by a smooth breather, so it becomes ook with a kappa. Ook. Okay, now let's accent our verb. Or sorry, let's accent. Is this a verb or a noun? Verb. Verbal accent is recessive. Go to my ultima. Is it long or short? Long ultima. Short rope. And what will I put over the epsilon? Again. Yeah. Right. So that's where it's like when the kids, when you realize those like shortcuts, you're like, I just put an acute on ek. Yeah, you totally. But the logic, it matters as you kind of build, so to speak. It's good both ways. All right. Does not have life. Good. Zoe is our dictionary form. Accent on the ultima, is that right? Ooh, accent on the ultima. That might invoke a rule. Just watch out. Okay, life, though. What's its job? It's a direct object, so we're going to put it in the... Good. Is it a pure alpha, pure eta, or mixed? Pure eta, and the accusative singular of pure eta? Ain. Does that invoke our special rule up here of if the ultima is accented, the genitive and dative singular and plural take a circumflex? No, it doesn't, because it's an accusative singular, right? Does this need to change to a grave? No? Can anybody find the one that does need to change to a grave? Chi needs to change to a grave. One of the funny things about chi is, even though it's technically an acute, it'll almost never, ever, ever be an acute. Because it means and, so it's pretty much always going to be followed by an accented word. Not always, but 5% of the time? I made that. Okay. I don't have a statistic on that. Whew. Okay. That's the logic of it. Does that feel a little better, Alicia? Okay. I know there's a lot. It's a lot. Again, this is kind of like the dump chapter, okay, where it's like kind of gets dumped on you. And if you'll really make yourself walk through the logic like that, that's why my high schoolers, their test literally is one sentence, an essay on why. So they'll go, life is a direct object, so it goes into the accusative singular, and it's a pure eta, so it'll have to be zoane. The accent is noun accent, so it has to stay in it's persistent, it wants to stay, right? And it doesn't change. So they have to walk through all of that for every word. So it can be like a one sentence test, right? Wow. It's so not. Okay. So, I'm going to erase this. You can watch the video if you want. Okay. Declensions. I'll leave that. Okay. Declensions. So, if you go to the zoo and you actually are a super big nerd and you look at the different nameplates, or even in English, if you say played in a basketball league and you played a game in a gymnasium, but if you played multiple games in multiple gyms, you would play in gymnasia. And if you saw a cactus plant, you would see a cactus, but if you saw many cactus plants, you would see cacti. So becomes in the plural, and us becomes I in the plural. Well, yeah, in Latin, right? Yeah, right. Okay. So what's going on there is when you see these words that are either derived from like Latin or Greek, and they're all over the zoo with different animals, you'll see almost always these plural forms. These are kind of Latin nominative plural forms. And the reason why they look different on their plurals is because they all fit into different patterns. And those are things that are called declensions. It's how they change their form. So a declension is just a pattern that a noun or adjective, we'll learn in a couple chapters, follows. So let's do some math patterns real quick. Okay, so I'll start the pattern and you fill in the blank. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go, okay. 2, 4, 6, 8. Good. 3, 6, 9. Now, how did you know that? How did you know that? You had to recognize, a really cool word, rethink, recogito. You had to rethink it. You didn't, believe it or not, and again, if you don't have young enough children, you just maybe take my word for it. I think all you relatively young kids, we do not emerge from the womb with these number patterns, right? We have to learn them. We have to cogitate them so that we can recogitate them. Like, oh, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Which is why it's really fun in like math class when a kid, like you give a pattern where you're counting down for the first time, and like 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, like, no. And it's like they have never thought of that pattern before. It's really cool. So declensions are kind of like that. They're these patterns that these nouns, the adjectives fit into that we just have to, we're going to just have to learn them. They go, for example, we saw our first declension had 3 so far. There's a fourth, but we had 3 sub-patterns in the first declension. Do you remember what they were so far? Good, all right. And those are even more specifically, we could say these are first declension feminine. We had a pure alpha, and it goes, can anybody say it? Here we go, ready? Us, un, plural. I, own, ice, us, I. That's it. That's the pattern. So if I see, for example, hora, and I go, oh, wait, that ends in an alpha, and it's got a row or a vowel before it, that's my pure alpha. It's going to go, us, un, I, own, ice, us, un, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, you know, that's it. Okay? And then we also saw, for example, our pure eta. And that would just be any noun that ends in an eta. Right? Hey, phone, hey, for example. And then we saw mixed, right? That mixture of ace, a, right? Alphas and a. Right? So it's one pattern, so to speak, one declension, but then it kind of has these like, sub-declensions, sub-patterns. Good. In a similar way, the second declension, the second set of patterns, has two sub-patterns also. Okay? The first, though, we just call the masculine, and the second of those patterns, we call it the neuter. Neuter is a fun word. It means neutral, we see it in the word like neutral, like Switzerland was neutral. It literally means neither. So when you take your pet to the vet, you have neithered him. You have neithered her. She is neither masculine nor feminine at that point. Not biological. You get the idea. Okay, so that's what happens. You're neither, for example, with Switzerland, right? You're neither with the Axis nor the Allies. You're neither. Okay? Your car, you put it in neutral. It's neither in drive nor reverse, right? There it is. Okay. It was funny. Actually, it was a third grader who brought up neutral. I never thought of neutral in a car. It's like, oh, neutral. Oh, my word, because I don't drive stick. Cool. Yeah. All right. So the second declension patterns, and again, if you have your recitation out, you can see them there. Logos, logu, logo, logon, logat. Logoi, logon, logois, logus, logoi. Now listen to the second declension neuter and see if your eyes and ears can hear why grammarians kind of group them in this same pattern. Ergon, ergu, ergo, ergon, ergon. Erga, ergon, ergois, erga, erga. Can you hear or see maybe why they're grouped together in the second pattern, the second declension? Yeah, sure enough, the genitive and the dative, so they both go o and own, ois, right? For both of them, yeah. So they're different, but they're grouped together. Kind of like those first declensions. They were different, but there were some similarities and some interchange and things like that go on there, okay? So there's not any new grammar for this chapter. It's just straight up, okay, I've got this new pattern that these words could fall into, okay, and I've got to be able to do it. I want to give one little warning, which is really fun. It's a fun, extra mental challenge. The neuter, let's look at that. What could be tricky about the neuter, for example, ergon? Good, you see them all? So we've got, this is so awesome. I'm sure there might be similarities in other fields. Let me put it this way. The same symptoms present themselves, right? My eyes see the same thing. Or again, in the plural. But it could be for any three basic reasons, right? This could be a nominative singular, an accusative singular, or a vocative singular. How will I know? Context, that's right, Jiminy Cricket. Always let your context be your guide. Okay? Always, always, always. Same thing over here. Erga could be a nominative plural, an accusative plural, or a vocative plural. How will I know? Context. Context is king. Context is king. What does Israel mean? For example, I was reading today, Israel had 12 sons. What does Israel mean? It's a name of a guy, right? Jacob. Right? So Israel, for example, doesn't always mean Israel. It's always based on the context of the noun. And that's not, we're not just talking about case, but we're actually just talking about the meaning of the word. Kind of back to your, whatever, ta ergon su, or whatever it is, right? We have to always be masters of context. And that falls actually under the virtue of prudence. Thomas Aquinas says the prudent one is a master of circumspection. Circum, and specto, looking around. You have to look around. You have to be a master of context. That's why the Proverbs are so frustrating to overly literal and legalistic children. Well, am I supposed to talk or not talk? Well, depends. There's context in which you need to hold your tongue, and there's context within which you need to speak out, right? But if we don't understand Proverbs, we could like bash people over the head. Like, silence is always wrong. No, it's actually not always wrong. It's not always virtuous. It's not always wrong. So we want to notice the form, and we're going to have to ask the question, what is it then? And context is going to guide us. If I already have a subject, well then maybe it's not a nominative. Or maybe the verb's a plural, so it can't be a nominative singular subject. If I have a comma or something that pauses it, that's often going to be a clue that we've got a vocative. So it's unlikely you're talking to work. It's possible, but it's unlikely. Okay? Let's see here. That's it. And we don't even have any new accenting rules. So by the way, so there's no, we actually kind of already added it when we said, remember, first and second declension nouns, if they're accented on the ultima, the genitive and dative plural, singular and plural, take the circumflex. So we already got that rule. Okay? All right. So work on your new declension and really take delight in the English to Greek. Really take delight in it. I challenge your hearts. All right. I think that's it for us today, unless you want to stick around and have questions. It is 8:54. I've officially let you out 5 minutes early. Evening teacher win. Evening teacher win. Yes! You know that never happened, though, with night classes. Just let me out of here. I need to watch Monday Night Football because my priorities are football. Any questions? Prayer requests, imprecations, concerns. All right.